Hey guys, welcome back. BDCKR here. We're back with our weekly Q&A thing. This is season 13, episode 15. There's two ways you're watching this right now, or you're consuming this right now. But if you're watching the video, do you want to tell them what they'll be seeing?
Yeah, so this is season 13, our season of doing a preview of who we think is going to be the challenge character this coming Thursday. That's Amy Kami Catwoman. And what I've appreciated about forcing myself to play with the characters, whether it's the challenge characters of that season where we did all the missing challenge characters or whatever, is I'm really starting to appreciate her. I used to not like her because she had some interesting limitations, but I appreciate much more the option of damage over time or no damage over time, right? Special 1, damage over time, lower damage. But her special 2 is no damage over time. Super useful against the Blackest Night Flash team, even though we don't face him that often. But she does enough damage on her special 2 that, and she can knock out on more than just the last hit. Now, she's only getting 3 hits. Fair enough. But it's still enough to make her unique enough and different enough, but still effective enough to be worthwhile playing. So I'm appreciating her, even though she is on the sort of cliche Hawk Girl, Rebirth Raven team. She works really well. Her special 1 has a lot of hits. So when it gives the opponents a lot of power, makes it easier to keep ourselves safe when we've got Rebirth Raven helping out.
Yeah.
So the other interesting thing I wanted to mention, just because of the week, I mean, we brought it up during the recap last week, Thursday. But never mind hoping that the missing challenge characters will come back. Now we've lost the Soul Taker Sword and Flashpoint Deathstroke from the recent sequence of multiplayer rewards.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at the prospect of maybe, never mind getting old stuff back, losing some stuff that we've been maybe spoiled and used to having for the longest time.
Yeah, and sort of along those lines, our first comment of the week, before we get into what we finished last week off talking about, we have Jack B4327, who says, not sure why they're messing with anything when the game is this old. No reason to be skipping over anything, especially when these items are in season only once a year. Hopefully they're all just being put to the end of the cycle.
So this is, all right, so interesting point in terms of guessing at what the mechanic is, right? We don't know. We don't know on the back end what they're doing. Devlin16, one of the mods on the Injustice Mobile subreddit, had mentioned that because we don't know, it's quite possible that maybe there's somebody who's messing around with it. But it's also quite possible that there's something sort of built in, a default sequence that's built into the code and required somebody to change it to make sure it had the, the additional...
Yeah, all the new stuff.
Right.
Yeah, and it was set to run for a certain amount of time, like an arbitrary number of years, and then this is just it running out.
Right, and what we'd mentioned, I mean, it was months ago, but that NetherRealms laid off a bunch of people. Mm-hmm. And so the team that's actually, or maybe it was Warner Brothers, I can't remember which one, but they laid off a bunch of people, and there's a good chance that the things that we expect on the back end, some of them just aren't happening because there's nobody doing it. Mm-hmm. And if this is the default pattern, missing some of those, then we may never get them back.
That's true.
So we're going to find out a lot more. I mean, if it was just a multiplayer thing getting messed up, then we'd be waiting months and months. But because we're watching what's happening in the challenge cycle, I think we're going to get at least a hint of what's to come no later than the end of May.
Yeah. So we'll see what's going on.
Yeah.
Yep. So the question that we wanted to get back to and just talk a little bit more about, because we talked some last time, was from Miguel Velasquez, 8199.
So maybe for variety, I'll read the question this time, and we'll pick up where we left off. So also to answer your question about the first topic of the U.S. versus Canada, I live in California, and it's eerie to an extent that people aren't worried enough about the issue because of how expensive everything is. For example, we are so caught up in work where 2/3 of our paycheck goes to rent, leaving us with little to no savings. It seems that we've become desensitized to all these problems happening around us, and it just adds to the tab we have to pay each month. To add on, I'm Mexican-American, and all of the ICE raids have been affecting my family as well, to the point where they can't even go out at certain times since some are undocumented. I frequently ask myself, should I go to protest or do something to create change? But then I think, why bother? If I go, I might not be able to make rent or afford food, so I get discouraged. Sorry if this ended on a grim note. I just wanted to share my opinion on the matter, sending support from California. And Amused Dragonflies -IT8NU had said, why would they be worried unless they have a warrant for removal or a record?
Yeah, and I mean, I think the longer that we see this stuff go on, the more examples we're seeing of, the ICE raids picking up sort of arbitrary people, right?
Never mind arbitrary. So there was a recent case where they actually admitted... All right, so this whole ICE thing is wild to me. They actually admitted that it was a clerical documentation error. Somebody who clearly should not have been, who was married to an American citizen, had a child that was an American citizen.
Yeah.
And was deported to, I think, one of those mega prisons in El Salvador.
Mm-hmm.
After, on his file, it was clearly stated that he shouldn't go back because of the risk of he would be targeted there.
Yeah.
And then when they caught that, the Justice Department is saying, well, yeah, it's true, we made a mistake, but we can't do anything about it now because we have no jurisdiction over El Salvador.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. Like, there is a lack of competence, a lack of oversight, a lack of care. Like, how do you make mistakes? Like, this is exactly the argument against capital punishment, right?
Yeah.
That when you do something like this, there's a chance that you will cause irreparable harm to somebody who's innocent.
Yeah. And, the goal of a sort of fair and just and democratic society is that for a random person on the street, that you are not at risk of your life being appended, ruined, ended, right?
Yeah.
Just by like a random sort of act by the government, whether it's, malicious or not, right?
Right.
And unfortunately, it's just, the individual rights and freedoms of people. It is, to me, interesting, at least, that you talk about the party that really touts personal freedoms, right? And liberty.
Yeah.
That is so willing to either excuse at the best, but like co-sign at the worst, like these sort of actions and behaviors that really are actively infringing on the rights and liberties of, American citizens and just,
So this is the interesting thing, right? Like, it doesn't make sense until you assume that along with that strict adherence to constitutional rights, there's also an overlay of white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
So that as long as somebody is pretty much white, then they are protected. It's actually true. And if they appear not to be white, if they present any other way, then they don't get the rights. I mean, this is the history, right? Where black people and women didn't get the vote until, I can't remember when, but some ridiculous time in the 1900s.
Yeah.
Right? Where, because there were people that, like, landowners were considered more important than non-landowners, and were more important than slaves, and more important than women, and whatever. It was all that. So it makes sense if they only are willing to protect the rights of those who are in power, or who are in that in-group, right? It's that whole thing where there's an in-group and there's an out-group. And right now the in-group for white supremacists is white people. Yeah.
I saw a quote from somebody who had voted Republican and was pro Donald Trump deporting illegals was the word. And I'm using the word that they did. I don't,
Right. Because I've been pretty clear. I don't like, people are not illegal. They might not have status. They might be in a place they shouldn't be. They might be placed illegally, but as a person, they're not illegal. Like, a person is never illegal.
Mm-hmm. But they were saying, oh yeah, well, I support this, but not for everybody. Like, my sister right now doesn't have proper documentation, so she's not supposed to be here. And so the idea that somebody could see somebody in their immediate family say, I want
people like them to be punished.
I want deportation to happen, but not to the people in my life.
Right? But categorically, they are literally the same, right? This is categorically the same type of person that they want punished.
Yeah.
But not mine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm exceptional.
It is just unfortunate, and it's hard to Because I think the problem too is that, those people are contributing to harm, but ultimately those people should be on the same side, right?
Sure.
So there's some level where there's frustration, and I don't think it's anybody's individual responsibility to reach those people.
Right.
But I think like as a larger group, like if you can reach those people and speak to them and help them understand, because when they're taking actions against their own best interests, right? It's they're victims of something, right?
Right.
Because they're not being benefited. But they are both victims and victimizing themselves and others, right? With their decision making processes. And it's hard to have empathy, I think, for people who gleefully sort of harm themselves to harm their neighbor more, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot harder to hold that and go, I feel bad for them. But I think like I do on some level feel bad for them, because there's a disconnect and there's a misunderstanding, and it's also hard on a level where that when somebody has that perspective, right, when they have, I don't know if it's naivety or ignorance or what, when they have a view of the world that has them working so directly against their own interests in a way where, like, if you imagine if they could take a step back and think about even just what they were saying, right, they would.
But is there I'm not even sure that there's an inconsistency there, because if you take people that are very much used to bad laws being discretionally used to prosecute other people, and that they've always gotten away with stuff, even though there might be a lot, like, this is their experience, this is what they've been taught. It's very much like a convicted felon getting away with stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Because this is just what happens. Like, they're used to it.
Yeah.
It's not that inconsistent. It makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
And so it's still the same joke. I never thought they would eat my face.
Yeah, the leopards eating faces party.
Right. And so I guess that still makes more sense to me than the other thing that I've been hearing in the news is that people are unknowingly having their status revoked. And there was at least one example in New York where people wearing a jacket that might be marked ICE, but their faces are covered. There's no identifying markers, no badge number, no name. Taking people and arresting them on the street.
Mm-hmm.
So here's my question. In a country with that Second Amendment, right, where people are vociferously, very loudly in favor of guns and relatively unrestricted access to guns, right? Like, whether there is any kind of thing that any hoops you have to jump through, they're not very difficult, right? Like, you hear all the stories about people who have mental health issues who are still able to get guns. So these are people, this is a country full of that. And you are giving them situations where they can't tell whether somebody is being criminally abducted and kidnapped, or being lawfully arrested.
It's true.
What do you expect to happen? So one thing people have said is that as an organization, as an institution, ICE is totally prepared for that, right? They're almost waiting for an excuse that if somebody, a good Samaritan who thinks that they are helping prevent a crime, jumps in with their gun and does something, that would be an excuse to declare martial law, to really sort of clamp down on and remove people's rights in the United States. But come on, these individual agents have to realize for that to happen, one of them might get killed. Mm-hmm. People have been killed for less.
Yeah.
And you hear all these stories about all it takes is one good guy with a gun to be a hero, to jump in, and one good guy with a gun to stop one bad guy with a gun. Mm-hmm. It feels like it's just a matter of time before that happens. And I can't imagine that those ICE agents have signed up for that. Mm-hmm. Or that they even, can they really not have considered the possibility that or even the other thing, what's stopping criminals from buying a jacket, slapping ICE on the back, covering their faces, and just abducting whoever they want.
It's a very strange and upsetting situation in America right now. And I think that to some extent it's sort of a failing of us, and I do mean us personally, like sitting here right now, that we, stuff like this happens in all sorts of places and has been happening, right, for
Sure.
a long time. But the proximity of America and the way that the decisions of America affect us, the way that it really is at our doorstep, right, has really, made me a lot more tuned into this news, I think, compared to news happening sort of more globally. And so I do think that on some level, being more broadly informed would be better. But like, I hear so much.
Is it our feeling? So I get what you're saying, right? Like that. I feel like because our lives are so entwined with Americans,
I think
we could do something, but it's not. They are a sovereign nation.
No, I'm saying it's not our failure for having done something, for not doing something about it. I'm saying it's our failure for not being as informed about when these things are happening in other countries and other places in the world, right? I think also just naturally with the news cycle, I think everybody in the world gets a lot more informed on what's happening in the States than what's happening in other places by default, like outside of their own,
Yeah. I mean, I think I'd like to think I'm informed, but in this case, it's not so much that I'm more informed, but maybe I am, because I am seeing all the stuff. You're right, the details. I'm just thinking that I'm more offended now because of what the United States has pretended to be, whether as a model for democracy or as a friendly neighbor.
Yeah.
I'm much more offended by it because it's close to home.
So there we go. Yeah. Do you have any other sort of ideas or things that you want to express before we
No, I just the biggest part, I mean, I'm angry, but I'm so disappointed.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to stand by my decision to not travel to the United States, and it seems like a lot of Canadians are doing the same thing, which is as effective, more effective than tariffs. Because the whole point of tariffs is that you want the person who's importing to your country to be making less money off you, right? That they're going to be picking different options, maybe not lining their pockets with money. And tariffs are one way to do that officially. But when people as a group just decide to boycott, you get the same effect. I mean, you lose out on the income. Fair. All right. So the government doesn't generate the income, but you achieve the same main directive of responding to, well, they don't want to buy our stuff because they're making it more expensive. We'll do the same. And I like that, actually. And it leaves us more flexibility to have other responses, like having an export tax on stuff that they actually need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there we go. Our next question from JimGong1034 is, hey guys, just wanted to ask, what type of device do you play on? I'm an old player trying to get back to the game, but apparently some app stores doesn't even support Injustice 1 anymore.
I saw that in the subreddit for Injustice Mobile. So definitely the newer, I think somebody was saying that Android 15 for sure doesn't support it. So right now we're still playing Google Pixel 3. Prior to that was an LG G6. And prior to that was a Moto G. So Moto G was the one where the video quality is way worse if you go far back. Yeah, if you go far back enough. I mean, and never mind that we were aiming a camera at a TV where we were sort of projecting off a tiny screen.
It's a pretty bad setup, yeah. And we were recording just sort of like natural room audio from like a camera.
Yeah. So Google Pixel 3 is still pretty good. I'm not sure which version of Android it's running. I think support stopped for that a while ago. But I still love it because of the free storage.
Yeah, a standard quality image upload.
Fine.
Yeah,
that's enough.
Yeah, I think that was one of the really cool things that Google did that was a real strong value add to me of having a Pixel versus another phone.
Yeah.
For people who didn't know, you could do backups, like full quality Google Photos cloud backups of your images for like years. And then they changed it so now you get unlimited standard quality on those devices. You're still grandfathered and you can't do it at full resolution. But one of the things that was wild is that you could literally transfer images from another device
onto your phone in the right
onto
folders.
your phone,
Yeah.
and then back it up for free.
Yeah.
So it was essentially, if you're connected to the internet, unlimited storage. And I absolutely made use of that. There was a trip that I went on where I was taking a ton of photos. I would fill up my phone, and then I'd hit Wi-Fi, and I would back them up in standard quality, delete a couple gigs of stuff off my phone. So it was just sort of a rolling way of phone storage, and it was like, for a quality of life thing, it was a really cool feature add, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they've phased it out on new devices, and on old devices you don't get full quality full resolution images anymore. But it's a shame, because it was a real strong sales pitch for a Pixel. And I think, still, relatively speaking, Pixels are the phone brand that I'm kind of happiest with.
Yeah, they're not bad. I don't mind. I mean, we switched over all at once in like the 7th generation. And they're at 9 now, right?
I think they are at 9 now.
Yeah, they have a pretty consistent cycle of how they price it, where at introduction you don't get a good deal, but they might have some, or you don't get a good price, but you might have some bonuses that you get. And then, because they do it like a month or so, is it, before 2 months before Black Friday, then they have the Black Friday sales where, you know, you get stuff. And then they introduce the A series. So I'm tempted, but man, it's the Google 7. I've been pretty happy with it. That was my first flagship phone.
Yeah.
Like, ever.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been relatively slow at adopting tech, not because I'm a Luddite, but because it's expensive.
Yeah. But I think, yeah, relatively speaking, I've been quite happy with the Pixels.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, not exceptionally so, but I think with phones, because of how expensive they are, right? It's nice if you love it, but just liking it enough or thinking you got your money's worth is good enough, right? Because it is an important sort of part of most people's lives now.
Oh, speaking of technology in people's lives, I should point out that we mentioned it last week, but now I've got an outcome. So I took the computer that we normally do all our filming on to
or
repair
editing,
shop.
more importantly.
Yeah. And I got the bad news. Originally, it was tried a different power supply. It seems to be booting properly. Then it stopped booting. And then it's a failed motherboard, which I got to find out if they can do anything about it, because all the components are good. It's got a decent graphics card. I mean, I really only use it for the only thing that's more intensive than watching YouTube and emails and stuff
is the exporting and video editing.
Is all that editing. And so it's a shame. It's only 3 years old, but I need to be. And so we're lucky to even be doing this, because part of our workflow is that there's still new footage all the time. But sometimes when it's an unpredictable week or it's a bad week, I can grab some footage from like months ago.
Yeah.
And this is going to be, so I think I need to really be grateful that this laptop that we're working on right now still works. It works at a decent enough level that we can make videos out of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So there we go. Our next comment comes from Magic Apple 6353.
Or Magi Capel.
Yeah.
Or Magi Capile. Capla.
Yeah,
Anyways.
It's definitely that one, I think, for sure. They say, is there a way to get an account unbanned or dupe it?
So, I answered this a little bit just now, right before we started filming. Unbanned, no. That is at a level that happens only from the server side. And it was bad enough when they still had their full complement of staff. The number of times that people were actually getting unbanned, you could probably count on one hand the number of people who claimed they gotten unbanned. And you can duplicate an account. There is a way. I haven't tested it recently to see if it still works. The problem is the duplicate account eventually gets banned.
Yeah, if you're duplicating a banned account.
Yeah. So here's the problem. When you duplicate an account, so we're not going to get into that because we're not ready to recommend that. But the way what happens is there's something that marks it as different, because if you duplicated an account, so if you've got two different accounts that aren't duplicated, one is not a duplicate of the other, when you switch them, you get that message, hey, do you want to delete or overwrite this account or whatever that Superman message with his hand up is.
Which data do you want to use?
Right. And if you switch from one account to a duplicate account, there's no message. It just transitions directly. So we know there's something in the account that identifies it as such. So the problem will be, it will can you unban the account? No. Can you duplicate the account? Yes. And if you duplicate it after it's been banned, our experience has been that account gets banned too relatively quickly. Something in it triggers the part that auto bans it back in the time when there was auto ban. Right now, I guess not enough people are getting banned for me to really know how much of it is manual and how much of it is automatic bans.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if there is any manual bans anymore.
I guess that's true.
Hard to say, right?
So the issue will be then, if you duplicate it before and then keep on playing with it until an account gets banned, is that any different? And I'm not sure. What I'd be afraid of is that whatever there is that marks it is something that is marked before the ban that links those accounts to make them similar.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I would be very reluctant to share an account with somebody first, but also to make a copy and let somebody else have a copy of that account because of what they might do with that and whether that would have an impact on the original account.
Yeah.
So short answer is no. There's some techniques people use to play around it where you could play, I think, a round of multiplayer if you boot it up without an internet connection, then connect it after, having to do with when the server takes a look at your account to decide, are you banned or not? But that it's not really that useful because to me, multiplayer is only secondarily about playing different teams. Primarily, it's about getting the rewards. And if you can't stay unbanned more than one run through multiplayer,
yeah, then there's no point.
You're not only you're not getting enough points to get the rewards, even if you did, you wouldn't get the rewards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Defeats the purpose.
We'll do maybe one more question
Sure.
here. This one comes from Sonic Nicholas 1995, and they say, I remember you mentioned in one of your Q&A videos that you got a Nintendo Switch. Are there any Switch games you consider getting? Obvious examples include Smash Ultimate, but some of my recommendations are Thousand Year Door and Sonic X Shadow Generations. So, I'll say that I have a Switch. I have owned Ultimate. I have also owned and played Super Mario Odyssey, the Legend of Zelda, not the Tears of the Kingdom, not the most recent one, but I forget what it's called. Breath of the Wild is what it was.
I remember the opening that was available at launch, right?
I don't remember if it was available
because we were at that party. We were at that Switch party. Remember YouTube Studios in Toronto? We were
I
at
don't
that Switch
think they
party.
had Breath of the Wild there.
What did they have? They had the dancing game. I'm sure.
Yeah, they had Just Dance. They had 1-2 Switch.
I thought they had Breath of the Wild because somebody was playing because they had a bunch of different setups with big screens.
It's hard to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so...
I miss YouTube Studio.
Yeah, me too. YouTube Studios Toronto is a cool place. But I've also been playing a lot of Stardew Valley recently with my girlfriend. And I played it back like years ago.
Right.
When I was like in high school. And there's a bunch of new stuff in it now.
Does it hold up?
It does. So the game is fun. What's cool is that it's a solo dev, but Eric Baroni, I think is his name, or Barone, has been updating it. And so there's a bunch of new content that was just not in existence when I first played.
Right.
And it's clearly meant to be like late game content. So there's some quality of life stuff that's different, and then a bunch of stuff that I just did not ever experience the first time I played. So it's been fun playing it again, and being able to do it in multiplayer too is nice. So that's that. There's also I've played It Takes Two there. My girlfriend has way more Switch games than I do because that's where she plays a lot more of her games. I'm more of a PC guy. So I haven't played Thousand Year Door and Sonic X Shadow Generations, but I to be honest, I'm mostly just working through my backlog of like actual games. Like they're not actual games, sorry, of like games I already own. I was gonna say, like, because to me, like, games I'm gonna buy are theoretical games, right? They're games that might be in my future, and actual games are games that are sitting in my library right now. And the other thing is that I have family share with like 4 of my friends. And any games they buy gets added to my family share. And now with how family share works, as long as they're not actively playing that specific game, I can play it. Right. So like one of the things that I've been playing recently is 1000X Resist, which I've been really enjoying. I might talk a little bit more about it in a future week when I play it. But one of my friends got it, and so my game library is massive. There's a huge backlog of games that I've owned from different times. Now that I have a Steam Deck, I've got some more games that I'm more liable to play. And not only would my backlog, if I wanted to play everything that I was theoretically interested in, probably take me years of like all of my free time, it's expanding at a rate that might actually outstrip my time, right? Like if I was playing video games, right, even if I never bought another game again, other people are adding to my games library, right, without my
okay. You know what that reminds me
input.
of? All right, so Ada Palmer did this whole series on censorship.
Yeah.
Like a series of videos and lectures and whatever, and a little book. And it reminds me of one thing that she mentioned. There was a point in history when the what's the press called? Is it the
printing press?
Yeah,
the Guggenheim?
Yeah.
I don't know. No, Guggenheim is not right.
Not Guggenheim.
Gutenberg
press was invented. There were people who were able to have a copy of every book in existence that had been printed and stay on top of it and be able to read it. At least
in that language.
Yeah. So, or just whatever, like I guess wherever the press started, there was a limit to what so it's wild to me that there could have been a time when you think of all the stuff that's published now, never mind the self-published stuff, but traditionally published stuff. And it's like, I'm hearing you say that about the games.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, it's wild to me the opposite way, that there are just so many games now that even in that one specific niche, that there just isn't enough time. Like we've hit some sort of critical mass.
They're in my library. They're already there. They're just they're appearing. Yeah. So, anyways, I think that's a good place to end it off for the week.
Add a little bit of wonder at how amazing and diverse and generative the world is.
And I will say that 1,000 X Resist, I forget if it's 100 or 1,000, so far has been a real example of that, where it's been a kind of a joy. It's been really interesting and unique and strange. And I can't recommend it yet because I'm not deep enough in. Right. I can recommend the time that I've had with it so far has been really interesting and unique and enjoyable. And I will want to talk about it more likely when I have enough to talk about, I don't want to talk when I'm halfway through something.
Right.
Because it's a qualified recommendation right now. Right. But anyways, to finish up, we'd like to give a huge thank you to all of our patrons on Patreon. That is Michael Devries, Irvin, Ruiz, Hoshi 127, and Nora Klimek, supporting us on the credited level.
And I want to give I want to give a shout out too, only because they've been sticking around with us for a pretty long time now.
That's true.
And there's something to be said for big donations, but there's also something to be said for the endurance, right? Mm-hmm. There's something quite impressive and very generous, and I am super appreciative.
Yeah, every once in a while, if I want to buy myself a meal or, a game or whatever, right? I go, oh, you know what? This one's from the patrons. And I do make an effort because I don't really use PayPal for anything else. So whenever there's money in my PayPal that I'm spending, I'm like, this is from the patrons, right?
Yeah,
and it's a very specific, concrete thing that I go, I'm spending this with their money. Yeah, and I do feel grateful for it specifically.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
It's like when somebody gives you a gift and every time you use it, you think of them.
Yeah.
Right? You go, oh yeah, that person got that for me. It's like that with the Patreon where I get something. I'm like, oh yeah, this is from them. Thanks.
Thank you.
Cool. So anyways, thank you so much. And thanks so much to all of you for however you support us. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.